evening. I'm Lisa Feely, your host for An Accountable Catholic. As followers of Jesus, we are held to be accountable, and we should be living God's will and using the talents God gave us. And so tonight's show, we have a wonderful guest, and I'm going to call him by his title first, Lieutenant Colonel, retired Lieutenant Colonel from U.S. Air Force, Jay Block. He's also commissioner out in New Mexico. So welcome, Jay. Glad to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you, Lisa. And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it very much.
No, well, tonight we're going to, you have some great information to share, and we're going to talk about being unaccountable, which might be opposite, thinking that we're the accountable, kind of an accountable Christian show, but it's really unaccountability and our Christian faith, right? So we're called to be moral leaders, and we'd love to talk to you about that because obviously you are very accountable being a retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and being a commissioner and everything you're doing with even serving office in many different ways, serving our country. So all the way from New Mexico. So I appreciate you joining us. Can you share with our listeners, because we haven't had the chance to get to know you too much yet, a little bit about your journey, Jay?
Yeah, I'd love to. I was born and raised in Manchester, New Hampshire. I grew up with my grandparents. They owned a 3-decker apartment building on the east side in Manchester on Spruce Street. It was a lower middle-class neighborhood. My dad and my mom had some issues in their marriage when they were during this time, so I became very close to my grandparents. My grandparents were very Catholic. My grandfather was Jewish, and
Wow.
That's
Great, though. Good.
Yeah. In 1943, he was in the Navy, and his ship was docked in Boston, and he was at a restaurant and saw my grandmother, and it was love at first sight for my grandfather, and he converted to becoming a Catholic, and he just loved the faith. They both did. They were very, very Catholic, very devoted to their church, which is no longer there. It was called Our Lady of Perpetual Help, and I grew up in that church. I was baptized in that church. But quite frankly, I had a little bit of a interest in growing up. My mother was a drug addict, alcoholic. My parents ended up getting divorced, and they were blue collar people. My mother was a truck driver. My dad was a welder and a painter, and then worked at the post office. So it was a lot of instability in the house with some drug issues in the family with them. And the one stability I had in my life was my grandparents. They were always there for me, and it was just great growing up there with them. So I didn't have much money, but after high school, I enlisted in the reserves in Massachusetts for some money for college, and then I ended up going out to North Dakota State, which I'm wearing my thing right here. Go Bison!
All right.
Yeah, so spent some time out in Fargo and got into the Air Guard, and also I was doing ROTC and going to college, and graduated in 1995 with a commission in the Air Force, and went off to do basically ICBM nuclear stuff. I was a ICBM launch officer. I was an ICBM maintenance officer. I was a nuclear policy officer in the Pentagon. I was a commander twice on foreign soil as the senior American representing our country in the Netherlands, and on a British island in the South Atlantic called Ascension Island. Did a tour as a deputy group commander in Germany, volunteered for a combat tour in Afghanistan. I was over there in 2005, 2006. And I moved to New Mexico in July of 2015. From Germany, and retired a year later from the Air Force. And I always kind of thought I was going to go into politics back in New Hampshire, because growing up in New Hampshire, we have the first in the nation primary. And when I was 16, 17 years old, I was working for a guy named Jack Kemp, who ran for president in 1988.
I remember that. Very good.
Yeah.
That's great.
And, so in the 80s, I kind of came of age in my teenage years there. And, obviously Ronald Reagan was a big influence in my life.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with New Mexico here, and I got a job as a nuclear consultant with a science and technology firm. And I decided that I wanted to continue to serve in some capacity. So I looked at it, how I could maybe go into politics. And I saw there was a county commissioner race here in the Albuquerque, outside of Albuquerque. And it was a very Democratic district in 2016. And the incumbent was very, very well known, very well liked, but she didn't have a record that I particularly liked. And my campaign manager was my daughter at the time, who came back from the Netherlands to run my campaign at the age of 19. And we didn't have much money. We didn't have no name recognition. We just knocked doors and kind of spread the message. And it was a tough race because in 2016, Trump was not very popular out here. He was on the top of the ticket. And I won and turned the county Republican for the first time. And I
what a record. I love it. I mean, what made you initially want to go into politics, or how did you really learn about that? I mean, I hope everyone, if you're listening, what a record of accountability. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, serving our country, seems like you worked your way with all the way through college. I mean, this is fantastic, Jay. So what interested you into serving in a different way when you got out to New Mexico?
So so the political thing, I never actually talked about this publicly, Lisa, but when I was a little kid, I was a news junkie. I used to like watching the news. And I remember watching this press conference, I guess, and the guy was Gerald Ford. And I saw him and I was listening. I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but I just remember everyone was quiet in the room listening to what this guy had to say. And I later on, when I told my mom or dad when they came home, I said, I want to be Gerald Ford. And I had no idea who the hell Gerald Ford was. I didn't really know what the president was, but I just said, I want to be Gerald Ford. And then I always just kept up with the news. I remember in the late 70s, especially November 79 into 1980 with the Iranian hostage situation, and watching Ronald Reagan in 1980 campaign, and then watching him throughout his presidency, I felt a sense of patriotism with President Reagan. I felt like he reminded me of my grandfather, just a really good man. And my grandfather was a very patriotic man. My grandfather had an 8th grade education and learned a skill as a jeweler and a watchmaker. And he, never made much money. But he was just a very decent man. And I've always adored my grandparents with how hard they worked. And I just felt like Reagan, there was something about Reagan that just really grabbed me about how great America is. So I wanted to serve.
That's great. Well, I'm going to back up, make you go back a little. I mean, in talking about accountability, and tonight's topic about how that ties into really moral leadership and our Christian faith, you could have easily taken a victim mindset. I mean, I'm not trying to push into that, but my question, I guess, for others to learn our both those who see it on video as well as our listeners is, why didn't you, or why do you think, or what advice, I guess, would you have with the tough life that you grew up with, Jay? And it doesn't sound like, without trying to get political, that your parents were probably very actively involved in politics or anything one way or the other. But, how did you not just say, woe is me? I mean, that's not a fun life.
I remember the stories my grandparents told me of how poor they were growing up in the Depression. And just, how it was after the war when he came, he was discharged in November of 45. He was in Japan and made his way back to Boston and married my grandmother in January of 46, and they had nothing. And I don't remember them talking about how they ever complained they had nothing. They just built the life for themselves. And I think that kind of resonated with me. Everyone always has it tougher than you. And I'll be honest with you, Lisa, I'm sure there were days when I was younger where I was like, why is everybody against me? Why am I going through this? But you look back, and I think those challenges or those struggles were actually gifts. I grew up with dyslexia really bad. So I had, some learning disabilities that a teacher in second grade helped me with. My parents' marriage was not great. I was an only child. There was drug use, alcohol, and that, and I knew that just probably wasn't the life for me. But I don't know. I just I didn't really know how. Um, you just get through it. You have some friends that I still have to this day for over 40 years, that were there for me. And then you find people in your life that for some reason find something in you or see something in you, and you just take advantage of that, and you gladly accept their help, but you owe them as well. My second grade teacher who diagnosed me with dyslexia, I really struggled bad when I was younger with reading and comprehending and writing. I'd write letters backwards. I couldn't read well at all. And now if you see part of where I'm sitting, I love books. I mean, I've read so many books. I love books. And then in sixth grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Scanlon, who really inspired me to go into the political science history realm. And then going through, I had a coach named Doug Glantz, who I absolutely hated with a passion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, who just to this day I keep in touch with. He was just he got more out of me than anybody I could ever imagine.
That's
And then
great.
in the Air Force, I had a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Dave Wright, one of my first commanders when I was a second lieutenant. I hated the man, hated him.
Yep.
But he taught me so much, and to this day, I'm still in touch with him. He's like a second dad to me. So when you come across some of these people that are really just tough on you, they're doing it for a reason, because they care about you.
That's great. So you really didn't let anybody break you down. I mean, you took it upon and learned from what they said and didn't give up. It sounds like a lot of persistence, which is great. So definitely we can use all your knowledge on not being unaccountable, right? So
Well, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, Lisa. I mean, a ton of mistakes that I regret, and I wish I could go back and fix. But you got to try to learn from those mistakes and try not to repeat them. And
Right.
in all these tough situations, even these challenges, look at them as gifts, because I'm glad I didn't grow up with, that privilege where other kids I grew up with that lived like on the north end of Manchester. They had their parents were affluent. They had the big houses. They didn't really have a care in the world. And I love my parents to death. And they gave me what they could. Looking back, even though with all the issues growing up, I know my parents loved me. And but again, I wasn't going to give up. I just wasn't going to give up. I didn't want the life that I saw some of my friends of my parents had, or just even some friends, what they were doing. It just wasn't the path I was going to go down.
Well, it sounded like, though, going back to the victim mindset, you had it sounds like much more also a growth mindset, where you didn't look anytime you made a mistake, you didn't look at it as a failure that was going to really just kill you, right? I mean, you kept going, which I love. I mean, that's what I think that's what I'm trying to get everyone to do, is just, hey, don't give up. You can achieve the American dream, I think, in our country.
Yeah, I mean, my grades, I wasn't the best student. I didn't put a lot of effort into junior high or high school. I was more concerned with, I loved playing baseball, and I was a runner. I was a track and cross country kid and hanging out with my friends. So school wasn't the priority. I just didn't have that focus of, all right, get good grades, because if you don't get good grades, you can't get from here, 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 and here. And I remember mapping out things when I was 16, 17 years old of where I wanted to be. But I didn't always put the effort into places I should have put the effort in. And then in college, I had to develop those habits, those good study habits that I just didn't have. And then you're struggling again to do well in college, because I knew if I didn't do well in college, or I'd get kicked out of Air Force ROTC, and then my dream or goal of becoming an Air Force officer wasn't going to happen. And then, so I was just motivated to keep pressing along.
Well, I love your story. It does. I mean, you and I chatted kind of off radio show. You have a life very similar to my dad growing up, where he was littlest of 12 and very poor and not a great life, and became a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force too. So I love that the Air Force gave that to you guys, and that you worked very hard to
Yeah,
get
there was, I mean, the Air Force, there's some things I didn't like about it, but there's many things I loved about it. And the main thing that I loved about it was the people, because I never would have gotten to meet so many amazing people, Americans, if it wasn't for the Air Force. And I learned a lot more about leadership and teamwork and getting the mission done, and how important my particular mission was in the nuclear enterprise, whether it was ICBMs or other weapon systems that I was working with. So, yeah, I mean, I have nothing but great things to say about the Air Force. They just treated me very well. I mean, they ended up paying for about 75% of a master's degree. They sent me overseas to live. I never would have got that just, living on, Spruce Street in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I talked about this in another radio interview last year. Was, I remember being in Afghanistan at this. We were stranded in this one place north of this place called Gardez in eastern Afghanistan, in a mountainous area. And I remember being out there in the middle of the night, looking up at the stars, and I remember thinking, like, man, I'm just a kid from Manchester, New Hampshire. What the hell am I doing out here? Yep. Or if I was sitting underground, pulling nuclear alert in Montana, I remember sitting in that launch control center, like, I'm just a kid from Manchester. What am I doing here? And so that my neighborhood has never left me. The blue collarness has never left me. And I've always appreciated those that have been on the blue collar side and just really, really worked hard their whole life. And that to me is noble, and that's moral.
That is moral leadership, and they're leading themselves, and therefore their circle of influence. I'm sure you've heard this. It's one of my favorite sayings, that in talking about having the right mindset, Sir Thomas Browne, and this was long, long ago, said, "I am the happiest man alive because I have in me the ability to convert poverty to riches," which is exactly what you've done, "and adversity to prosperity." And a lot of people think of prosperity and think, oh, he's rich, got a lot of money. That's not my point. My point is, you're prosperous when you are enlightened, I think, inside, and can bring a lot of good to others from the talents you have.
Yeah, I think some of the richest people I ever met, again, were my grandparents. I mean, they were together for 63 years. They weren't wealthy at all, but they were rich with their faith and rich with their family. Even some of the issues that families have, and we have those same issues. But one of the things, one of my favorite quotes, and this is behind me. You can see my shadow box for retirement. Yeah. And there's a quote in there from Jackie Robinson, and it says, "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives." And that, to me, is something that I have striven for. I haven't always lived up to that, but it's important that when we are given a lot, and I feel like I have been given a lot over my life, you give back. And part of my way of giving back was volunteering to do humanitarian missions in Afghanistan, or serving the community as a county commissioner, or just writing. And no one has to do this, but just writing little checks to different charities for like $10-15 to March of Dimes or St. Jude's or Wounded Warrior. Maybe taking the time.
I try to always, that's one thing, like everything I wrote on my book, all the profits are going to charities. I think that's huge. Well, listen, we're going to have to take a quick break. A little bit. That's right. We'll take a quick break. We'll come right back in about 30 seconds. Thanks so much, Jay. Stay with us.
Carolina Catholic Radio is excited to announce an alliance with Lisa Feely, author of An Accountable American. Her new book offers a blueprint to every person who wants to embrace how to be accountable. Learn how positively to impact your life and the lives of anyone around you. 50% of the book profits will be donated to a local 501c3 Catholic charity, including Carolina Catholic Radio and those affiliated with us. If you want to learn how to achieve enlightenment, peace, and prosperity, this is a great start. Now back to An Accountable Catholic Radio show.
All right, well, we're back with Jay Block, and again, Lisa Feely here, your host for Accountable Catholic. Jay, I love how you were summarizing that, the quote from Jackie Robinson, and the other one that I love, and I'm sure you've heard, and a lot of people have heard, is, and I'm never going to say it exactly right, but to those that are given much or receive much, much is also expected. And I do think some of us have been very blessed by the grace of God, and you definitely have lots of talents that you're giving back, which I appreciate. One of my questions, and you and I chatted about too, I mean, I think America was founded on that ideal, and that we really have a polyglot background. That's the American way. But I'm not recognizing that as much today. I feel like people are giving up. We're so divided. And I love President Reagan. Again, I actually was on his campaign, so I'm a little older than you, back in when I was in college. And he said, and I'm going to read his quote, "An unaccountable government is a grave obstacle to the pursuit of happiness." And I think you going into serving and consider going into politics would be very helpful. Tell us a little bit about what you're kind of, without trying to get into directly politics, right? Because we're such a divided country, but just tell us, what are you standing for? What's your campaign all about? How do we help others becoming more accountable and stop being so divided and stop doing this? What I'm going to say is really not Christian moral leadership. It's not when you want to take the victim mindset, when you want to be so emotional, there's just no more critical thinking going on.
It starts at home. It starts with mom and dad. I think one of the most serious issues that we have in this country is the breakdown of the family.
Yes.
We have fathers who, quite frankly, are cowards when they leave, their pregnant girlfriends or something like that, or their
wives,
something like that. And they leave their families when their kids are young, to me, the father is such an important figure, and I can relate because I am a father, and I've struggled many times as a father with trying to balance family and try to balance those traditional values with a career, with how two parents got to be on the same page, which doesn't always happen. But mom and dad, in my opinion, need to impress upon their children that they can have a better life. And I wanted my kids to have a better life than I did. Now, I used to tell my son, Tyler, you don't have to make more money than me to be more successful than me. I don't really care about that. And I told him, you could be a manager at Jiffy Lube, and by the way, you are going to be richer than me if you got a strong character and you're taking care of your wife or whatever like that. You beat me. I wanted him to understand that. Because we need a lot of really good men in this country to stand up. And and again, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes along the way, but I guess I want to get across to them, it's not the materialistic piece that makes you rich. It's what's in your heart. It's what's in your soul. It's the content of your character, not the color of your skin. Right. And I think once we start teaching kids, and teachers need to do this too, is take these adversities that are in front of you, whatever they are, whether it's a broken family or whatever it is, and grab onto those and really just put your head down and keep charging ahead. You're going to do fine. I'm telling you, if you can make it through high school without getting pregnant or getting someone pregnant, without dropping out, and you can get a job and stay off drugs, you're going to do okay. If you work hard and you come in at a minimum wage, if you're coming out of high school, you work hard, you gain experience, you go up the ladder.
Right.
And I think you're going to be pretty proud. I mean, you don't have to make a job making $100,000 or more a year, but just the character that you show of working hard for yourself to make yourself better and your family and to take care of your family.
Right.
That to me is success.
Right. I know this is not a challenge we're going to overcome overnight, Jay, but I'm curious, especially as someone going into a leadership role for us in our country. In this book, I did a lot of research, and the one thing I found that I think causes us to have really be failing as a country. To your point, is the poverty level, and the poverty level comes directly from, and you just said it, and I know you know those numbers as well as I, but I'll share it with the listeners. 43% of all babies born in America in 2019 were born to a single parent. 43%. We can't run a country that way. I mean, the breakdown of
No.
the family and family into poverty is just, I mean, the single mom is more likely to be in poverty than anybody else. I mean, we can't continue to do that. And to me, that is unaccountable and it's unchristian. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, we love everyone and we want to help them, but you've got to also use your head and use the love and grace of God, like use those talents, make some better decisions. Like you're saying, have a plan. So what say you? I mean, how do we get out of this, Jay?
So again, I'm in government as an elected official, and I don't trust government. I don't really care for government. I think government will make more mistakes and make things worse than what they are. My job, to me, and talking to people, is all I want to do is get government off your back, especially if you're a small business owner, and tell me as an elected official what I can do to help you. What regulations are really stupid for you that, like, man, Jay, I wish you could get rid of this because I could maybe get more revenue and hire another person, or maybe give my employees raises if you would just help me with this, tax breaks here, things like that. So my job, my philosophy is get government out of their lives, out of their businesses, and let them grow, because I trust the people a hell of a lot more than I trust government. Those statistics you talked about, the 43%, they're worse in the minority community. The Black community is about 75% of Black babies are born.
I hate to tell you, that's 91% in 2019.
And that's awful. And the other thing I hate is, country's so damn divided. Apparently, if you're white, you can't talk about something else. But I'm going to tell you, we're all Americans, I don't care what color you are, we're all Americans. And I really want a vibrant Black community, that 91% or 75%, whatever the number is, it's way too high, because we're going to pay a price for that as taxpayers. When you see, young Black men that are gunned down in the streets, or life of crime, or, young Black girls getting pregnant with no fathers, that doesn't just hurt the Black community, that hurts the entire country. And I see the same thing here in New Mexico, with the poor white community, with the Hispanic community.
So I was just going to say, I mean, we're all young Americans. I mean, we have got to help all Americans to have the boat rise. We can't leave it.
Right.
Like, I love our saying, no man left behind. Let's try to get us all on the same page.
And I think government tries to be noble if you look at the Great Society, but the Great Society has been a complete failure in this country with the trillions of dollars that we spent, and we're still roughly the same poverty level. But when you look at the breakdown of the family, we're worse now post Great Society than we were pre Great Society. So what the hell's so great about that?
Right. Right.
100%. When government starts incentivizing behavior that goes against the family, which the Great Society did and still does, that's a problem. And then when you see abortion clinics that are mostly in poor areas, that's a problem. Now in New Mexico, we're getting pushed for legalized marijuana. That's a problem. It sends the wrong message that the state is condoning you getting high, and it's okay with that. When we should be worried about, especially here in New Mexico, we have the highest child poverty rate, highest child hunger rate, 48th in the nation in unemployment, 50th in education, 49th in violent crime. And
we got a whole bunch of problems, but we're worried, about whether or not we're.
I mean, can we focus on better schools, school choice, vouchers, charter schools? Can we focus on making sure we have, get rid of this bail reform that takes criminals it's a rotating door in the police station? Can we work on maybe making the tax code more beneficial for economic development here in New Mexico, because we're getting passed over for jobs left and right. We have a very left governor and a very leftist roundhouse right now, and the state is hurting. And this is one of the reasons why I'll tell you, Lisa, and your listeners, is why I'm going to be announcing my run for governor.
I was so excited to hear that. So we'd love to support you in that endeavor. So please make sure here, and we're wrapping up here in a few minutes, I'd love to make sure we get your website. And some people will say, and I just want to be really clear, well, this isn't a political show, Lisa. You're talking about accountability and being Christian, but I guess this is the message I'm trying to get across in the show and to share to others, and you're doing a great job at it, Jay. We're all in this together. And as Christians and Catholics, we're called to help our brothers and our sisters. And that requires accountability. And if you're going to be accountable, I mean, you tell me, but it's not a left, right, Republican, Democrat, all this. What it is you can't ask for handouts. You can't want free college. You can't want free everything handed to you and still be accountable. You can't make poor choices day in, day in, day in, day in, day out all the time and expect different results. I mean, there's that saying that says expecting different results from doing the same thing is insanity.
Yeah.
We're at a point where we've never been more divided. We've never been more, gee, I'm calling you this name, you're calling you this name. So I appreciate your leadership.
I will tell you, there's a political class in this country that wants us divided. I have no doubt about it. Because once we're divided, they can easily just control us,
right.
and that's what they're doing today. Listen, there's some great Democrats out there that are very moral people.
That's right.
I might not agree with their politics.
Right.
But they're moral, good people.
Right.
There's some Republicans, by the way, that I just think are not good people. I mean, I'm a Republican, but there's some great Republicans who are moral. It doesn't matter what political party you are, what race, gender, ethnicity, creed, religion you are.
Right.
We're all made in God's image, and that's
exactly.
it right there.
Yep.
And that's what you have to keep in mind, is we're all God's children, and I think we want what's best for the next generation of Americans. For me, I really believe that our freedoms are at risk.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that I pass along to the next generation a free country that is strong with basically a limited government that lets you live your life so you can succeed. And government needs to be providing incentives, not handout. And that's my main philosophy.
And leave us with our religious freedom, because to me, again, the other very important factor on top of poverty and single moms was that our religious base has dropped dramatically since I graduated.
It's interesting you say that, because during this lockdown across the country, here specifically in New Mexico, I mean, this governor here went out of her way to treat churches different than other businesses. Churches can only have 10% or 25%, when businesses could have 50% occupancy rather. And I certain political segments in America hate religion, and they're going to do whatever they can to chip away and peel you away from your faith, because our faith is extremely important to us. And if they can pull you away from your faith and make the state your God, and make you worship the state,
well, all the truths just went out the window, so they can fill it in with whatever they want.
And they're doing that with this cancel culture as well. So, that's why I'm running for governor. I will never, ever shut down a church or fine a church. I will never shut down a business. That's not my role. That's not what my role is going to be as a governor. My role is to basically give the power back to you, the people, and you tell me what you need me to do to help you. I am there to serve you. This governor here in New Mexico, she is one being served, and she's drunk with power. And the people here are depressed. They're hopeless. They don't feel like they have a voice. A lot of them are leaving New Mexico, and it's a beautiful state with great culture, great history, beautiful scenery. And I love
Albuquerque. I love Taos. There's beautiful parts of it. So real quick, we're going to have to end, but can you give everyone your website, and we'll go ahead and put it up as well to try to support you in any way we can as a fellow Christian brother of ours.
Thank you. It's block, BLOCK, 4FOR, New Mexico.com. I'd greatly appreciate, be honored with any support that you could give me. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as J Block or JC Block. And again, I'm running for the people, for our freedoms, and to get control of our lives back, because the government here and the governor have extremely overstated their role in our lives. And we gotta roll this back.
Very good. Well, thank you so much again for joining me. We're going to have you back for another show. So thank you, everyone, for listening to another show of An Accountable Catholic. Lisa Feely here, signing off for tonight. Have a great week. God bless.